Hey everyone, it's Callum from Cagefront here. Welcome back to the channel. And if you are new here, welcome to the channel. Now, MMA, since its inception, has given us some absolutely unbelievable jaw-dropping moments that we really could not have predicted. And 2024 alone did exactly that. We had Max Holloway knocking out Justin Gaethje in the final second of their fight at UFC 300, to then seeing Max Holloway's chin getting cracked for the first time in his career against Ilia Topuria. And then we look at Diego Lopes, who had a rapid ascension as a fan favorite, fighting Dan Ige on a few hours notice out of his natural weight class. To then, the craziest of all, we had Belal Muhammad becoming the undisputed welterweight champion. So if 2024 was anything to go by, what could 2025 possibly bring? And that's why in this video, I'm going to be giving you my top 5 2025 UFC hot takes. So some of these hot takes might not be too favorable in the MMA community. That's why they're called hot takes, but I will fully explain the top 5 hot takes that I do have and why I believe that they are going to come to fruition before the end of the year. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, in at number 5, I'm predicting the fighter of the year, and I believe it's either going to be Tom Aspinall, Ilia Topuria, or Merab Dvalishvili. Now, it's going to be extremely close who gets it, but I believe Tom Aspinall is going to be the one that gets it over those two just. Now, looking at Merab, he definitely comes in with a chance, not because of the way he finishes fights, which he doesn't. He is going to get 3 decisions, 3 decision wins in this calendar year. He is going to be the most active champion this year. He's beaten Umar by a decision already. He will beat Peter Yan by a decision, and then he will beat Sean O'Malley towards the end of the year. And then when we look at Ilia Topuria, he is going to take out Volkanovski, which is hard for me to say, and then he is going to take out Diego Lopes towards the end of the year. So he's coming off 2 finishes, and then we have Merab getting 3 decisions. Now, Tom Aspinall, I believe that he takes out Alex Pereira in the super fight of the year, in the middle of the year, middle towards the end of the year. And then for the last fight of the year, the main event, the last pay-per-view, Tom Aspinall takes out Cyril Gane. That caliber is going to be enough to get him fighter of the year. Now, I don't believe that he is going to be fighting John Jones. You're probably asking, why isn't that in his record? Because John Jones, I strongly believe, is going to cave, and he is not going to be fighting Tom Aspinall. So the Pereira fight gets made to really just amp up 2025, because that's a fight that they're heavily relying on between Aspinall and Jones that I just do not see happening. And obviously Pereira versus Aspinall is 100% the next best thing. It's what every single person's dog and their nan wants to see this year. So hot take, Aspinall is getting fighter of the year this year, beating Cyril Gane and, most importantly, Alex Pereira. Now, in at number 4, we're stepping away from the UFC, and we are going to be going to another organization, which is the PFL. And I believe the PFL will be a borderline wasteland by the end of this calendar year, because there are already terrible signs that the organization is going under. I mean, we look at the fighters that have already left. We have Patricio Pitbull, who has been absolutely shitting all over the PFL. We've had Aaron Pico, who is a fantastic up-and-comer at featherweight, who has now left. He's a free agent. And then we also have other top fighters who are eyeing exits as well. We have Patchy Mix, who is not happy at all. He stated that the communication with the organization through his agent has been very poor. They haven't been filling the needs for them. They are not giving them fights, and that's why they are leaving. And when they're not getting fights, I mean, they're just wasting their prime era, and that's what they are mad about, which is completely fair enough. And not just to mention that, with the contract basis and getting fights, they have slashed their prize money in half. They have gone from $1 million to $500,000, which, granted, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of money, but as Dana White said, it is unsustainable. I completely agree with him. Having those $1 million cash prizes not getting in the business as well. I mean, there's not that many people that watch PFL overall. They are not going to be able to afford that much every single run through they do for that prize money. They just cannot do it. It is not sustainable. And now we are seeing the repercussions of it. Cutting it in half is already an extremely ugly sight for any fighters going in who are thinking about, oh, should I go to the UFC? Should I go to One Championship? Should I go to PFL? Oh, they've just cut their prize in half. I think I will not go there. There's definitely that point there. I mean, that is one of the biggest things in terms of incentive as to not going to the UFC. That is the one incentive they have, because the UFC is just so much better at promoting the fighter. And if the pay isn't there to outdo that, then they are just going to go to the UFC or somewhere where they could possibly just get paid more, possibly like One Championship or somewhere else if they get a good deal, maybe influencer boxing. Who the hell knows at this point? But ultimately, even looking on the women's side, I mean, they have like a skeletal structure there. It is just bones. They have no one there. Dakota Ditcheva is literally single-handedly keeping that women's MMA division afloat completely. Just women's MMA in general. Dakota Ditcheva is literally women's MMA in the PFL. If you don't have her, which they will not have her for long, it's screwed. The women's MMA side of it is gone. Now, Dakota Ditcheva, she 100% will join the UFC at some point because she's already getting all this money from the PFL. She takes that, she goes to the UFC, gets the fame, and then she gets those sponsorship deals that just you cannot get in the PFL because it's the lack of exposure. And Dakota, with how much she is getting exposed through the PFL already, if she joins the UFC, she is going to be like Ronda Rousey level, realistically, if she keeps up her win record and that striking that she does have. Man, she is going to be exciting coming into the UFC. Not only that, with the fighters they have and them leaving, we also have the other promotions, especially with the Global Fighters League now, who is picking up all the scraps. I mean, they've just signed Tony Ferguson and they're signing all these different fighters now. You look at their Instagram page and scroll down it, they have so many fighters now that realistically a lot of those promotions like the PFL and One Championship would really like to have. Obviously, they're the UFC scraps at this point, but those fighters leaving to the GFL, they're not going to be in the PFL to bolster their roster, and that is where it's really struggling. They're struggling with the finances. They're struggling with keeping fighters within contracts because of their poor communication. We have other promotions who are nicking fighters from them. They are in trouble. And once we see Dakota Ditcheva go, once we see Patchy Mix go, they are not looking good. And Johnny Eblin, guys like that, they will 100% follow suit. Now, in at number 3, I want to talk about double champ status. Now, since Conor McGregor made it like a thing, it has been a very high honor that a lot of fighters have been wanting to claim, but it's been very difficult for fighters to actually make it happen. Now, there are 2 reasons as to why it is so difficult to even make it happen in the first place. One is obviously getting enough title defenses to even get to that point. And also with the timelines, making sure that the challenger and the champion above can actually even line up to do it, and for the storyline to even make any form of sense, as well as being in the fight if the challenger can even win that fight anyway to claim double champion. That is what is so difficult. But this year there has been a lot of fights circulating around because we do have a lot of fighters that have pretty good strings of title defenses and they are wanting their shot this year. But my hot take is I believe we are only getting one double champ fight this year, and that is going to be Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall for the super fight. Now, on a timeline landscape sense, if you haven't already checked out my predicting every pay-per-view main event video, this makes a lot more sense as to why, because I predict literally every single main event, and it explains why there aren't that many double champ fights in there. Of course, there's only one, but to simply get an outcome for this video, we do have the possibilities of Pantoja versus Merab. We've got Ilya versus Islam. We've got Islam versus Dricus, or possibly Shavkat Rakhmonov if he beats Belal at welterweight. We've got Dricus versus Pereira, and of course Pereira versus Aspinall. Now, looking at those fights specifically and breaking them down, we need to see why their fights won't actually come to fruition. So looking at Pantoja versus Merab, I think it's the most feasible one out of any of the double champ fights aside from Pereira versus Tom Aspinall to actually happen. They just need their timelines to actually match up, but I don't believe they will, and I think Sean O'Malley coming back at the end of the year is going to be the reason why this doesn't happen, because Pantoja will fight Kai Kara-France in a few months, I strongly believe, and then Merab will most likely fight Petr Yan a few months after that, towards the middle of the year. So they could fight at the end of the year, but the issue is O'Malley will come through for that title defense. I strongly believe that at the end of the year, he'll come through for Merab's last title defense of the year for a rematch, because they would prefer to have O'Malley as the champion over Merab. I think O'Malley just gets straight back into a title shot. I don't believe it should happen, but I think it's going to happen. Business is business. O'Malley brings business. Now, O'Malley getting that shot at the end of the year, Pantoja, they would prefer Pantoja to fight O'Malley for double champ status without a doubt over Merab, because they have history. They have trained together. They've had beef about training and getting dropped and this, that, the other. So there's a storyline there. Now, if O'Malley can go through, fight Merab and beat Merab, that's a storyline that they've closed off. O'Malley has then come back as champion. That's what they want. And then straight after, they can have Pantoja fight O'Malley and create another storyline. So that is definitely a feasible fight. And I believe that Pantoja, he will 100% get a double champ status shot, but it will be in 2026. Now, aside from that, there's obviously Pantoja versus Royval 3 at the end of the year. So I believe that is going to happen towards the middle of 2026 is when Pantoja is going to get that double champ shot. Now, for Ilya looking at double champ fighting Islam, I just don't see Islam affording the opportunity again to a smaller guy to take his belt. He's already done it for Volkanovski, and Volkanovski had something to offer. Volkanovski was pound for pound #1. That's what Islam wanted. And does Ilya have that? No, Islam has already got pound for pound #1. There isn't really anything except a notable name on his record and an O to take for Islam. I just don't see any reason there, and he wants his own crack at double champ. So I just don't see that happening this year. I think if they're gonna fight, it's gonna be next year, realistically. Now for Islam's double champ shot, I don't see him fighting Belal at any point. Now, it could only really happen if Shavkat beats Belal, which I think Shavkat will beat him, but he's got so many welterweights at the top there that are waiting for a shot. I mean, if Kamaru Usman and Joaquin Buckley go through and beat one or the other, they're ready for a shot. Leon Edwards as well, if he beats JDM or JDM the other way, they're ready for a shot. There's just so much congestion at welterweight. I think we need a title defense from Shavkat to really break things down. Other than that, I just don't see Islam getting that shot this year. And then for Islam fighting at middleweight for double champ shot, skipping a division, going against Dricus, there's just no time, because Dricus is going to have to fight Sean Strickland at UFC 312, and if he beats him, Islam is not going to overtake Khamzat Chimaev for a title shot. It's not happening. Khamzat versus Dricus is 100% the fight to make, because we don't even know if Khamzat actually beats Dricus. Is Khamzat going to fight Islam? I don't see that happening in any way, shape, or form in my mind. So yeah, I just don't see that happening, because Dricus is just going to be too booked up this year, and he's not going to be ready for a fight at the end of the year, because I don't see him having the title at the end of the year. I see Khamzat Chimaev taking that anyway. And then that speaks for itself for Dricus moving up to light heavyweight, because he has no time. He's not going to be able to fight Alex Pereira, and Alex Pereira, as we know, as my hot take suggests, we know he is wanting to get that double champ status. And if he beats Ankalaev, man, he's cleared out that division pretty much completely. He is ready for a heavyweight fight. He is a huge light heavyweight. He can give Tom Aspinall a good shot. And I mean, there are questions there, because Aspinall fighting anyone else, he pretty much just bulldozes everyone. Alex Pereira has got that power equalizer there and has worked on his ground game. So ultimately,
that is the one fight that is going to happen. I believe that is going to be at UFC 320, the one double champ shot. I don't see Jon Jones pulling through and fighting Aspinall, and then Alex Pereira, once again, he is there to save the day, and he will make that super fight happen against Tom Aspinall around August to September. Now, in at number 2, this is definitely a hot take that's pretty hard to predict. I just believe that 2025 will not top 2024 in relation to the quality of MMA consistently through a calendar year, because ultimately, beating the Sphere as a very expensive, unique event that it was, UFC 308 on top of that, and how stacked that was, as well as obviously UFC 300 as a hallmark event, is just going to be very, very difficult to beat. And not to mention even the fight nights, because we had very good, consistent fight nights through the year. I mean, we had Jan versus Figgy, we had like Umar versus Corey, we had Whitaker versus Ikram. I mean, we had very, very good fight nights throughout the year, and it's also very difficult to beat because there's no like big crazy arenas like the Sphere opening up in this year that I'm aware of. And calendar wise, it's also very difficult to see many super fights lining up this year, as I've said, only having one double champ status fight this year. So I mean, we're not really going to be able to get a lot of those super fights in my opinion, in my predictions. And look, Aspinall versus Pereira is a fantastic fight and definitely the best chance that it has of shining 2025 through, but that alone is just not going to be enough. If there are more double champ shots and more of that UAE bloody oil money pouring through for some really good fight nights like we've got with Izzy versus Imavov, then we're definitely looking at a very good year. But it's going to be very hard to top 2024 because they really need to cut back on Apex events. I mean, we've had one Apex event with Hebas versus Dern, and now we've already got another 3 Apex events booked. So it's really not following a good trend at the moment. They just need to branch out, fight more, have the fight nights, especially with crowds, and also having them branch out to other countries. I mean, increase the marketability, allow especially like title holders like Ilia Topuria and Dricus du Plessis spearhead their countries in their own countries, like having an event in Pretoria for Dricus du Plessis, just, you know, covering Africa as a continent, and then especially somewhere like in Spain, like the Santiago Bernabeu in Madrid, having that, they can pull off an event there with an open stadium, that's just going to be extremely memorable, and that's what makes the year so much better. But at the moment, we're just not seeing any of that come to fruition and materialize. Obviously, it's early in the year, we have no idea what could happen, but at the moment, I'm pretty strongly predicting that this year is just ultimately not going to be beating 2024. Now, in at first place, which can arguably be better or can arguably be worse, depending on if you're a fan or not, Jon Jones and Conor McGregor, they do not fight this year, and they don't ever fight again, at least in MMA. I mean, Dana's 100% promise is going to be broken on that Jon Jones versus Aspinall fight, thanks to Jon Jones. I've said it a million times, he's going to fold. Pereira will then fight Aspinall, and he will just retire as the arguable GOAT, and he will duck Tom Aspinall. And then the more sad side of it is Conor McGregor, because Conor McGregor the guy has just been a joke. I mean, he's really just made himself a joke at this point. He knows that he cannot compete with the top echelon of lightweight and welterweight fighters at the moment. They are just absolute killers. They have power crept him now. They've outgrown him. He doesn't have the ground game to deal with them, and he's been out for way too long. He just dicked Michael Chandler around. He's not serious. He's doing coke on a Lamborghini yacht. We just are not seeing him again. I mean, he's literally just hounding for a Logan Paul fight at the moment. There's nothing there for him when it comes to the UFC, and the UFC have him on a tight leash, but they have him on a tight leash that he can just not do anything on, because he's not fighting in the UFC again. If he's not fighting in the UFC and he's still under contract, the guy's doing absolutely fucking nothing. So his UFC career is over. Jon Jones, he is out of the fight with Aspinall, and he is retiring, and those guys will ultimately wrap up their careers. Now, I hope you enjoyed today's MMA hot take video, and I'm really keen to hear your suggestions for the hot takes in the comments below. And please like, comment, subscribe. It really goes a long way for the channel, and I really appreciate all the support so far. And I will catch you in the next one.